Flesh and Blood fanatics. Today we're looking at the Blitz pre-constructed Levia deck list made by Legend Story Studios. I like to make the joke that you're better with any hero in this game if you've read their lore on the FaBtcg.com, and Levia is no exception. The way they write her is so in character with how you think that she would play on the battlefield. I'm Ruby, and before we get into this deck list, we'll use the link down in the description on your next FaB Foundry order. It supports the channel and supports FaB Foundry. We're players first, and we like making this free content to give out to the community. Levia, she commands great power at the cost of cards with blood debt that deal her damage. We have a lot of cards with blood debt, and Levia has this voracious hunger to not only pay the blood debt, but to fill her graveyard and to sacrifice her graveyard Spoils of Wars to the Banish Zone. So look at all these cards that have the additional cost of discarding 3 random cards from your graveyard. So Levia has this insatiable hunger to continually get all these cards into her graveyard, and that can pose some tricky situations, especially the beginning of the game when you have 0 cards in your graveyard and how to fill them. And then there are just some times during the mid to late game where you got gas, you keep playing these powerful cards, but then you run out of cards in your graveyard and you can pretty much only swing your axe. So next on to our axe, starting with our equipment and our weapon. The axe is a decently powered weapon. It obviously has the chance to miss, and it'll be a minimum of 3 damage and a maximum of 5. Now, some metrics. We have 26 cards out of our 40-card deck that have 6 or higher power. So almost 70, I think that's 70%, less than 70% chance to hit, and to obviously pay for our Levia hero ability. And in addition, this whole theme of great power with great sacrifice, looking at our deck metrics, we also have 10 cards that block for 0. We have 10 whole cards, 25% of our deck blocks for 0. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. And we're running 19 reds, 6 yellows, and 14 blues. And again, we have 26 out of 40 cards that have 6 or higher power, directly synergized with Levia's hero ability. Moving on to our equipment, start it with Ebb and Fold, our helm. So we're going to start with the Spell Void 2. This is best versus chain in the Monarch Blitz Deck meta out of the 4 new heroes. And for any other hero versus Prism, Boltum, and the Mirror, I would recommend you use Ebb and Fold's ability, the instant ability, as opposed to using the Spell Void. How I like to use Ebb and Fold is keep it for the late game. Since you're not chain and going to be bringing back cards from the Banish Zone, you really just want to wait to use Ebb and Fold till you're in that late game where you have more cards in your Banish Zone with blood debt than you have life. So essentially, if you don't trigger Levia's ability, you're going to die. So what Ebb and Fold is great at doing is maybe you can keep a 2-card hand at the end of the game, and otherwise where you would lose, you can use Ebb and Fold to get a card with 6 or higher power in your Banish Zone, and you'll live another turn. Spellfray Cloak, don't need to say too much. Decent in the Prism in the Prism matchup, best versus chain. Goliath Gauntlet. This synergizes with almost all of our attack action cards. Keep in mind that Goliath Gauntlet will synergize better with some cards than others. Now, what are those cards? Those are going to be our on-hit effect cards. We're only running a total of 3 on-hit effect cards. That's our Lunartide Plunderer and our Soul Harvest. These are the only on-hit effects in our deck. Other than that, we're just a big smash, do lots of damage type deck. So keep in mind, you don't always have to save Goliath Gauntlet for these cards, Lunartide Plunder and Soul Harvest. However, keep that in mind that that's what it's going to, in a way, get the most utility out of them. Our last piece of equipment is our Hooves of the Shadow Beast. It's our best equipment by far, blocks for 1, and gives us a second action point. Now, similar to our Goliath Gauntlet, Hooves of the Shadow Beast will synergize better with some cards than it does with others. For example, it synergizes best with Graveling Growl. You can only play Graveling Growl if a card with 6 or more power has been put into your banish zone this turn. So essentially it has to be the second attack in the combat chain to be used. Now, there's very few times with this deck where you're attacking more than once a turn. We obviously have our Dread Screamers, which can get go again. We're running the red and blue, so we have 4. But other than that, we don't have many options in our deck to attack for the second time. So Graveling Growl is an example of saving your Hooves of the Shadow Beast to get off a really powerful Graveling Growl turn. Because otherwise, Graveling Growl, it's one of the first cards I would cut from this deck. It's so inconsistent with where the deck's at currently that it's pretty hard to pull off. So often it's just a red that blocks for 3, which is awful. Getting into our main deck list, we've separated it by red up here and yellow and blue. Once again, the metrics of the deck, we're running 19 reds, we're red heavy, 6 yellows, and 14 blues. Now remember I was talking about 10 cards, 25% of our deck block for 0. For example, Deadwood Rumbler, which is a great red card in this deck. It just plays into this whole great theme of Levia having great power with the cost of a downside. So how do we mitigate that 25% of our deck not blocking? We have Rally the Reared Guard. We have 4 copies, red and blue. Because we have cards that block for 0 or, Blood Tribute's an instant. So that is a very relevant problem. We're not going to get into every single card of the deck list. You'll pick it up really fast as you play and start seeing, because there's only 40 cards, you have no sideboard, so you're going to see better and better what synergizes well with each other and how to play the deck optimally. So I want to talk about the Mentor and our Legendary, or our Specialization card, Soul Harvest. Our Mentor, Lady Barthamont, while she is very rich in flavor in alignment with the lore, I don't think she's a good mentor. I think she's one of the worst mentors out of the 4 mentors. The fact that she can miss on her ability, it makes it so hard for you to reliably get, 2 or more lesson counters. It makes it so inconsistent. Like, compare it to, and even if you get it, our Specialization card isn't even that good when we're playing Dark Heroes or Shadow Heroes. Really only best versus Light Heroes. So Lady Barthamont, I think she's not that good. I would actually take her out of the deck in its current form. I think she's really bad. I look at Bolton's Mentor, for example, always giving his swords +1, and Lady Barthamont, while powerful, can miss 26 out of 40 cards in our deck. That's a good odd, but would still a decent odd to miss. So that's my thoughts on the Mentor. Soul Harvest, you can obviously fetch it up with your Mentor after getting the 2 counters on Lady Barthamont. Soul Harvest, it's decent. It obviously does everything we need to do. It's a blue, it's a resource, has a power of 6. So if we ever banish it, then it's going to Levia's hero ability, and it blocks for 3. It's just a good all-around staple. But keep in mind, the Mentor, even if you're able to get the 2 counters and, go through this whole setup cost of achieving the 2 counters on Lady Barthamont, it's very likely with how fast you churn through your deck with Levia that Soul Harvest is going to be already in the graveyard or banish zone. So not only is the Mentor inconsistent, she's not even that powerful, if that makes sense. So upgrades, I'm not even going to get into upgrades. I'm just going to get into a couple cards that I would cut first. One of them being Graveling Growl. Blood Tribute is really bad as a blue. We would rather just a blue that blocks for 3. It doesn't have 6 or higher power. Yes, its ability can save you in the late game. It's actually won me a game, essentially, because I was able to banish a card with 6 or higher and save my life. I was in that sticky situation you'll get with Levia, where you have less life than cards with Blood Debt in your banish zone. So yeah, Blood Debt can save it, but it's a really bad card. I would take out one of the blue Rally the Rear Guards. Obviously, red is fantastic in this deck, but I don't think we need... I would like to see a couple more cards that block for 3 and then take out one or both of these blue Rally the Rear Guards. Lunar Tide Plunder. It's really only good versus Shadow Heroes, versus Light Heroes, being able to banish a card up from their soul. But against Shadow Heroes, it's such a bad card. It's really bad. And once again, that's please use the link in the description on your next FaB Foundry order. I'm Ruby. Catch you next time.